This is the day that essentially confirms that the November election in the US will indeed be a repeat. Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. And 15 states just held votes of Democrats and Republicans to choose their preferred candidates. For the Republicans, a choice between former President Trump and his former UN ambassador, Nikki Haley. While on the Democrat side, it's essentially President Biden versus nobody except boredom. In this single day, the winners can pick up about a third of the delegates, or in fact 70% of what they actually need to guarantee that they are their party's candidate. Joining me from Sedalia, Colorado, is Sky News US correspondent Annalise Nielsen. Annalise Nielsen, thanks for your time so late at night. Let's start with a contest between Trump and Nikki Haley. Now, Trump went in today already having won every contest so far, except in the very left-wing Washington, D.C. That went to Haley. Today, though, all she picked up was the seat of the state of Vermont. That's the only one she won. Big win for Trump, wasn't it?
Look, it was. There's no other way to look at this than a success for Donald Trump. He won in a number of states. The only one that she picked up was Vermont. You're absolutely right. Again, quite a left-wing state. But what's coming through on the polling booths when we speak to people is the fact that she really wasn't picking up any of those normal Republican voters. We're seeing in quite a few different contexts, because it is different rules in every state. But what we were seeing was Democrats voting in the Republican primaries saying, look, there's no point in us voting in our own primary because we've got Joe Biden regardless, unless they wanted to do a protest vote about Gaza and write in uncommitted. They wanted to influence the Republican side of the ticket, and every single one of those voters, you ask them, well, what will you do come November if it's Haley versus Biden? Well, I'd probably vote for Biden. So that's where it's a really difficult task for Nikki Haley to push ahead. But the other thing I think we should watch is just how much the Republican establishment's locked in behind Donald Trump. There was one senator who came out and endorsed Nikki Haley before Super Tuesday, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. Mitch McConnell's stepping down. We've got so many of these more moderate Republicans leaving the fold because they know that this is now a party that's centred around Donald Trump and the MAGA movement.
Joe Biden, in the meantime, he was running in these primaries against nothing but apathy. How did he go?
I mean, yeah, he did well. There was some smatterings of those uncommitted votes, that has been a campaign, as we saw in Michigan. Over 100,000 voters voted uncommitted because they were concerned about how he's handled Gaza. That seemed to pop up a bit in the Minnesota race. The only one he lost was American Samoa, and I guess that's a good thing. No one seems to have heard of the guy who did win, and we're talking about a casting vote population of less than 100 people. But I think that we do need to keep in context that this is all completely uncontested. He hasn't had a serious contender allowed in the race, and there are legitimate concerns. We do ask people everywhere we go what they think of his mental fitness, and this isn't something that's just manufactured by right-wing media as is so often claimed. This is something that ordinary American citizens see and they are concerned about, unless they really are those kind of devoted Biden supporters who couldn't see a bad thing about him, like we see with the devoted Trump supporters. What we do see is concern about whether he can take on another 4 years. It's not a matter of seeing out his term now. It's saying that, OK, he's going to be in for another 4 years and leave when he's 86.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there are those... his poll numbers are terrible, and it does seem to be about him seeming too frail and forgetful to keep going. Plus, you know, not great domestic economic figures and trouble overseas and lack of American prestige. He had this response yesterday.
What's your message to Democrats who are concerned about your poll numbers?
My poll numbers, the last 5 polls you guys don't report, I'm winning 5 in a row. You guys only look at the New York Times. They're a great paper.
He's winning in 5 straight polls. Is that true, or just another Biden fade out?
I think it's a very optimistic read of a very pessimistic document. I'd encourage anyone to just look it up themselves. This isn't in-depth investigative journalism. Look at the polls. They're very comprehensive documents, and so you can tend to find at least one metric that works in your favour over others. But for the most part, he is polling terribly. He polls even worse in theoretical matchups against Nikki Haley. He doesn't poll well against Donald Trump, and critically, he's not polling well in those key swing states that decide these elections because of the Electoral College. You have to look at those states with the razor-thin margins that can flip, because that is how you become the president of the United States. And so when he says he's polling well, you have to take a pretty narrow view of a broad document to come to that conclusion.
Well, it's very late at night. Your defences are down. You're standing in a pub. So I'm going to put it to you. Gut feeling, the way things are shaping up, who will be America's president?
I don't say this with any kind of personal intention for one way or the other. I still don't think this is settled. And I know exactly how the primary process works. I know how locked in we are technically with the maths. I know how these conventions work, but there is still every chance we could see a contested convention. We could see Democrats putting pressure on Biden to step aside, and that completely changes the calculus for the Republicans.
Well, I think the way that Joe Biden is sleepwalking to, almost literally, to defeat, the Democrats are going to put huge pressure on him to step down. But in the end, it's his call, and his call alone under the rules. So we shall see. Annalise Nielsen, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.